I got plenty of folks waiting to hop in the online room, and so we're gonna go live. And
What chapter are we in?
14.
Okay, I thought, well, that's a long one, isn't it?
It certainly is. 35 verses.
It's very hard to keep those in your mind,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. It is.
listening to them.
I'm gonna scoot, and that way Kev can hop over here. And...
Yeah, he'll be ready. He's putting that switch in real quick.
All right.
Hi,
Good
Micah.
evening, everyone. Hi.
Hey, A-Box. How are you?
Oh,
We're gonna be doing Proverbs 14. I'm wondering. I don't know. It's. I'll just say this. Let's just read through it, and we'll get into discussion. But I am of the impression there'll probably be plenty we'll want to come back to and touch base on next week. My wife is home with the kiddos. They're just taking turns getting the Kennebec creeping crud. Nobody's sure exactly what it is. They get a little bit sick. 101, 102 fever, which really stinks in this temperature. It's hot outside. But so Amber's there with the kiddos. So I didn't go to my Wednesday morning Bible study today for fear that I might have been sick. But no, the last one they kept just bypassed me as well. So yep. Just waiting on Kev. He's coming in a second. Yep.
Just heard the lawnmower starts. That's a good.
What's that?
I just heard the lawnmower starts. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's doing the
It's
lawnmower.
working.
Yeah, he got the switch in the
Okay.
mail, so he's just
yeah.
putting that in.
All right. Well, we will just wait then. I don't want to start reading without him. So, good stuff.
You starting
What's that?
at 13?
We're in Proverbs 14, and we're just going to start with verse 1. There's a lot here, but we're going to. Hello right back to Scott and Laura joining us online. And they're with us this evening. Yep. Had a few good meetings with nothing new to report about the other church that we're looking forward to potentially joining hands with here. But I should know a little bit more this coming week. It'll be good.
I'd hate to lose this.
What's that? I know, and I don't think we will. I think that there's a strong possibility that something like this would be able to continue as it is, and we'll be able to chat about that probably next week. I think that's going to be a thing that we be able to continue. So I'm excited about that. I am. That's been a silver lining because I don't want to lose this. This is nice. He came in. I'm guessing he's washing his hands because of the oil. The grease. 6. Okay. Sorry, online watchers. Just
You say 13.
14.
Oh,
Proverbs 14. Yeah. It's 35 verses. That's enough for 7 of us to read 5 verses each. Welcome.
It runs.
It runneth.
And I'm not telling you where I have the spare keys because it's a secret.
Did you get this one made?
No, I ordered a little ignition switch.
Oh, so it comes with new
It's like
keys.
$20, and she's running.
You're the man.
Took me
Isn't
like
he handy?
almost 30 seconds to put it in.
That's really funny.
And it started
He's
out.
like John that way.
All right.
Put his hand to anything.
Yep.
Cool.
It does need service though.
It what?
It does need service.
Yes, I'm sure.
It'll change new belts, new blades.
Just like us, when he gets a little older, needs a little more help.
We need service.
Hey,
All right, Proverbs 14. There's enough for 7 of us to read 5 verses. If there's a lull, I'll just read 5 more verses and we'll just get right on. I don't want to hang out for too long. So jump right in if you're looking to read. If 2 people start at the same time, we start sudden death mode. No, I'm just joking. All right, I'll read the first 5. Lord, be with us, please, as we jump into this text. That you would give us some wisdom and some illumination. We're here because we believe in you. We believe in your Son. We believe in your Holy Spirit. We believe in your church. And I ask that you be with us this evening as we jump into Proverbs 14 in Jesus' name. Amen.
I just about cracked this open when you started praying.
Yeah.
Dear Jesus.
Shame.
Right?
So good.
In the mouth of the foolish is a moxie or whatever that was.
Yes.
All right.
Uh,
Verse 1. Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. He that walketh in his uprightness feareth the Lord, but he that is perverse in his ways despiseth him. In the mouth of the foolish is the rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them. Where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox. A faithful witness will not lie, but a false witness will utter lies.
A scorner seeketh wisdom and findeth it not, but knowledge is easy unto him that understandeth. Go from the presence of a foolish man when thou perceivest not in him the lips of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. Fools make a mock at sin, but among the righteous there is favor. The heart knoweth his own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy.
The house of the wicked shall be overthrown, but the tabernacle of the upright shall flourish. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Even in laughter the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is heaviness. The backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways, and a good man shall be satisfied from himself. The simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going.
A wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. The poor is hated, even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends.
He that despises his neighbor sinneth, for he that hath mercy on the poor, happy is he. Do they not earn that devise evil? Or mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. A true witness delivers souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies.
In the fear of the Lord there is confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. In the multitude of people to the king's honor, but in the want of people is the destruction of the prince. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the soul, of the bones.
He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker, but he that honoreth him hath mercy on the poor. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness, but the righteous hath hope in his death. Wisdom resteth in the heart of him that hath understanding, but that which is in the midst of fools is made known. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. The king's favor is toward a wise servant, but his wrath is against him that causeth shame. It's a lot there.
I have a big thought.
Share your big thought.
King size Snickers? No. It's a big thought.
You're about to earn a king-size Snickers.
Really?
Free. It's a Snicker. Come on, Snicker.
What I love about what I noticed is labeling comes from action. Your action will label who you are and what you are.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge theme of this area is, and I think that's the few chapters before and a few chapters after, is your actions will label you.
Yeah.
Because, so that's a wicked man, that's a heathen, that's a great man, that's a good man. Your actions will label who you are and what you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I saw.
It's funny, right? Like everybody, believers or unbelievers, have a inkling of expectation of that being manifested in the world. Here's what I mean. Today I read a brief slander piece intended toward Lauren Boebert. She's in politics. She's like the governor of, or representative or senator. Yeah. And she is, anti-abortion, of course. She's pro-life. She's conservative. And they did a lot of digging and found that she used to be, apparently, a sex worker, had a couple of abortions, just as recently as 6 or 7 years ago. Whether or not this is true, it's believe it or not, in my mind, irrelevant. If somebody's been forgiven and they moved on, great. But the whole point is that everybody on this forum online was saying hypocrite, 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 because they recognized, at least in their mind, with the knowledge that they believe was true, because the simple believeth every word, says verse 15, right? So we need to do our own research. And doing our own research doesn't mean reading somebody else's research and calling that doing our own research. But anyway.
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Right, exactly right. But they'll say hypocrite because, and again, would they be as quick to call out a liberal? I don't think so, but that's not really the point. My point is someone is making a life standing up for certain values. And I want to scoot this so I can see Adam and Eileen a little bit better. I want to be able to see you guys. There we go. Standing up for certain values, and then when they find that behind closed doors you either were not or are not that, they have now labeled you based on what your actions were or are, regardless of whatever you say with your mouth. Talk is cheap, even 3,000 years ago. Talk is cheap. I say 3,000 years ago because not all these proverbs were penned as recently as
Even
it would
later
take it down.
on,
Yeah.
it says
Right.
even a child is known by his
That's right.
doings.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that, that's what gets me about this whole thing about being a follower of Jesus. You get a lot of people and they have a lot of wordsmithing and wordcraft, and they know how to construct a really nice verbal device that convinces everybody they follow Jesus. But when Jesus returns, or when we stand before him, he will not be asking for a password. He won't ask anything per se, in my opinion. The Bible says he'll know. And that knowledge is, and that's not to scare anybody. It's not to make anybody quake in their boots. If I'm alive, I don't constantly have to, you've heard me say this before. I don't have to look for a birth certificate. I just live. If I follow Jesus, that's how I live. I'm not worried about performing up to a certain metric. I just want to follow Jesus. But I'm glad you said that, Kev, because you're right. That does characterize just about everything in Proverbs that you see. This is what a person is, no matter what somebody says. So take, for instance, verse 14, the backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways, and a good man shall be satisfied with himself. This is a really cool indicator of, like, when you look at someone's life, don't listen to what they have to say. Look at the fruit of their life. Somebody could tell me, hey, I'm a super Christian. I'm called to the ministry. I want to be a pastor. I want to be a deacon. Right. But, I don't really care what somebody says. We want to watch their lives. And that's the case with anybody. When you bring them into an interview process and you're hiring somebody for work, it's not just about the right answers. Do they show up in a flowery shirt and bare feet, or do they actually dress the part? For case in point for me. But I'm saying, if I went into a job interview, I'd say, hey, what are you looking for? What is your dress code? What do you want me to, and live it, show it. Even that, I suppose, could be fake, but we look for more than words in this life. How about verse 1? It says, every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. There's an implication there that was introduced in Proverbs 31, but it's not really introduced there, is it? Because this is much sooner. The Bible says that the woman rules her home. And growing up in Fundy land, there's one extreme or the other, and it's not limited to Fundy land, hyper fundamentalists, and well, my woman, she knows to just know her place and know her role. Oh, okay, you're a jerk. Thanks for letting me know that right out of the bag. But the other extreme is, you know, the weak man who is metaphorically always in the passenger seat. Sometimes actually, sorry, I don't know.
Wearing the pants.
Right, you know,
Wearing the pants.
exactly right. And I guess what's really interesting is the Bible has always struck a really cool balance between a woman ruling her home is a man who is mature, confident, godly, Christ-like enough to say, this is your home to rule. And Doug Wilson wrote about it in his book, How to Exasperate Your Wife. It's a great book. It really is a great book. He said, if my wife tells me to take off my shoes when I enter that home, I'm going to take off my shoes when I enter that home. She rules the home. And that's not to say that she's in charge. You say, wait a minute. I know I dashed your dream. She's not. Charge is something that's given. You know, she's been given a charge. She's not in charge. We don't want to lay that burden, that responsibility, that great weight on what the Bible calls the weaker vessel. That's unfair to them. But we give them charge. And men are pretty, I think, at this point in the game, I'm 11 years into it. I know I'm still a little newer, but even I know you got a lot of empty space between your ears if you're really going to try to, I don't know. There is wisdom in saying, yes, dear. And it's not just pragmatic. It's actually biblical. Amber doesn't have much if I don't give her the home. What does she have? If I micromanage her ability to do everything, I micromanage the children. What does she have? What is her purpose? You know, she's a doormat. So I'm just throwing that out there. That was a big mistake of mine early on in our marriage. And I was raised essentially to think that. I didn't mean to be. And not raised by my parents. Don't get me wrong. They were incredible. But, you know what I mean? I don't know how to, the denominational tradition. And I don't want to throw Baptists under the bus. I say that a lot. When I say denominational tradition, I'm talking about my apparently quite narrow sliver of fundamentalism. But it's one that interestingly most of us share some sort of history with.
Yeah.
I had a couple more. Verse 4 is often used as an excuse to keep a dirty home. Verse 4 says, where no oxen are, the crib is clean, but my much increases the strength of the ox. I said, well, there you go. It's dirty. And I think a really good application is when we were doing a lot of work here in the spring, and Brother Ray was doing a lot of work, and some of us were doing some work, and there were things out that we weren't just going to put up every Sunday and put away. Things were being done. That's, I think, what this is talking about. It doesn't mean that you microwave some Hot Pockets and you left the wrappers out on the coffee table. Well, where'd the rocks? No, it had nothing to do with what the verse is saying.
It's the barn, not
Right.
the house.
The barn, not the house. Right. Yeah. I have a couple more, but I certainly would love to take a back seat for a second. Anybody else have any thoughts? Proverbs 14, some things stick out at you.
I like number 10.
10.
The heart knoweth its own bitterness,
Hmm.
and a stranger does not enter bitterness with its joy.
That is, I want to understand that better. The heart knoweth its own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy. Oh, look that up for me there, champion.
What?
I'm curious, right? Like
Where?
what? It's verse 10.
Which word?
Oh, I'm sorry. Heart knows its own.
Can't hold it down.
Hmm.
Goodness.
Well, if you get eastward, like most people do, trouble, bitterness, trouble. No. There has to be. Be right back.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hello, Internet Land. We paused
Gonna
this
bust out one of them.
brief moment as our pastor
Mine's over
grabbed
there.
one of his research documents,
Research documents. I
and
love
he's
it.
back to pour upon us the wisdom of his soul
No, I'm just gonna study it with you in front of
in
you.
his research document.
The NLT. The NLT.
I thought you were going to get a Hebrew one.
Huh. Each heart knows his own bitterness, and no one else can fully share its joy.
That's how I understood it.
Right? But even then, I feel like
Here goes again.
Well, at least you don't have to jump over the chairs.
That's true. That's true. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Let's get
Dangerous.
Cold rescue.
Robert Alter's direct translation. 3 volumes. That's a big one. Proverbs. There's got to be something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
10.
Airplane mode on.
Same thing. The heart knows its own bitterness, and in its joy no stranger mingles. But let's hear. Yeah, okay, so Alter picks up on how weird this is. It says, in the midst of didactic platitudes,
Okay.
it's platitudes is used today as like almost pejorative. But platitudes isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just like in my experience learning to preach, they would use homilies negatively, but a homily is a wonderful thing. Anyway, in the midst of didactic platitudes, we suddenly get an arresting aphorism about the incommensurability of each person's private experience.
Yeah.
Can we go back to bitterness
Okay,
and
yeah,
joy?
I get that.
But it does seem super random, right? It seems like it's just stuck right in there, which I should expect in Proverbs, but a heart knows its own bitterness, and in its joy, no stranger mingles. And it's really not, see, how many verses? No, it's not a, I'm trying to think of how that could fit into the structure. I'm lost. I don't think there's a structure. I don't think it has to do with other verses. It's just, oop. All right, so verse 8, the shrewd man's wisdom to understand his own way, the folly of dullers deceives him. Guilt dwells in the tents of scoffers, but the upright favor. Because there's all of these contrast, right? And then verse 10, the heart knows its own bitterness, and no stranger, okay, and no stranger shares its joy. Yeah. I'm curious what
Everybody's
Eugene
different.
has to say on this.
Yeah, everybody
Everybody's
has
different.
his own personal.
Yeah.
What hurts you doesn't hurt me.
Yeah.
I'm getting there.
The heart wants what it wants. No, it's like it's its own. So in other words, telling someone I know exactly how you feel might not be.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay. So Eugene, I can always count on Eugene. Eugene Peterson, the message. Here's what he says. The person who shuns the bitter moments of friends will be an outsider at their celebrations. That is more didactic. You see how that works, right? Didactic, it has to do with leaning toward teaching and instruction. So we have all of these didactic principles. I like how Alter calls them didactic platitudes because that's what they are. But then verse 10 just kind of sticks out as a sore thumb. It's just something that would go on the wall of a kitchen, right? You know, or in the back cover of a magazine, you know.
An embroidered sampler.
Right. But exactly, I was thinking of an embroidered one myself. It's funny you said that. Like a what do you call it? A cross
Cross stitch.
right? With the wooden ring, and you put the
Like
yeah.
the golden rule. and-
Yes. And so to me, it was kind of like that. But then I think Eugene is kind of leaning toward like the practical application of such a truth in saying, if you aren't with people in their bitterness, you also won't share with them in their celebration. It may be a stretch. Either way, it's a personal application of that. It's certainly not what the text says exactly. Otherwise, some other reliable translation would say it. But Ice Clean?
The person who knows their own heart, and a stranger, it's a stranger. It's not someone that should
Right.
be meddling.
Yeah.
Meddling, because that person knows their own heart,
Yeah.
and if they didn't ask, it's a stranger. The stranger doesn't know that.
Right. That's a good point. It does use the word stranger.
It's the NLT.
Yeah, the NLT. I have that one here. Each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one else can fully share its joy. So it does seem to be just
parallel to you.
yeah, just showing the two extremes of the heart, and saying that no one else can really fully experience these things. I like Eugene's application. I think it's true, but I don't know that it's denotatively speaking, like directly what that proverb is trying to say. In an arresting aphorism, that means something that stops you in your tracks, and an aphorism means it's a short, memorable saying. In other words, something that'll fit on a picket sign or a bumper sticker, about the incommensurability of each person's private experience. So basically, no one really knows. No. I do think it's interesting to say that Laura actually stated, only you know the depths of your own heart,
Yes.
which really is what this text is declaring, in the most proverbial sounding way.
I mean, it really can't be that. Everyone, a man doesn't know his own. I forgot. It's in Jeremiah.
Jeremiah 17:9. Yeah, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it, right? The who can know it there in Jeremiah, of course, Jeremiah is a poet, if anything, right? He's a poetic preacher. When he says who can know it, it's a hyperbolic expression stating that it is so deceitful and wicked that you'll never be able to fully plumb the depths of it. Not to say that we can't be honest with ourselves and know how we're feeling, sort of thing. But yeah. So yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting proverb. Really interesting proverb. One could probably write a good little book just on that. I'm very curious to dig in a little deeper there, but that's good. Verse 12, we know this one pretty well. There is a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. I want to read to you something that's in the margins, preached by Sam Davison. I'm old. 13 years ago. This isn't a quote from him, but this is what I took away from a message that he preached on August 9th of 2009. He said this, or I gathered this rather. Whoever you are, whatever the subject, this is true. There is a way that seems right to us, but leads to death. We cannot rely on our conscience. It has been tainted by the curse of sin and darkness and is therefore completely, radically imperfect, despite its beneficial qualities when led by the Holy Ghost. And then I wrote down the example of Saul. He did what he did with a crystal clear conscience, persecuting the church of God. It seemed right to him. So I wrote at the bottom, the human way is simply the Luciferian way. Well, I wasn't very easy on myself, I suppose. It's self-centered, arrogant, rejecting God's light. And then I wrote at the end, by the way, Jesus said, I am the way, followed by an all caps, double underline, 3 exclamation points, amen.
To me, this comes down to, well, I thought,
Yeah, exactly right, Ralph. Exactly right. Yeah, Kim.
I prayed about it.
All right. Kim?
The one about the rod of pride.
Oh, yes, in his mouth.
Yeah. What, can you-
That is in
It's
verse
in the
3.
beginning,
Yep.
yeah.
In the mouth of the foolish is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them.
In my 30 years of study.
40 years.
I was at 40.
It was 40. So Rev Kev had a run-in with somebody who he was demonstrating effectively why someone was not right on a certain issue, whatever that was. I don't know. I don't even know. None of my business. But this guy replied, when confronted with unassailable evidence that he was not correct, he simply said, well, in my 40 years, of study.
I was studying out the Paul and Barnabas contention thing.
Oh, yeah.
And on this forum, this guy was literally proven wrong with Bible and with history.
Yeah.
I mean, just flat out, dude, the Bible does not say the conclusion you're coming to. And the guy literally spouted, well, in my 40 years of study.
Yeah.
He spent 40 years studying Acts 15.
And you're still wrong?
You're still.
Give it up.
Right. I gave an illustration in the opening podcast episode on the King James discussion.
Yes, you did.
And it was, I've been taught for many years, this is an illustration, that the Baltimore Orioles won the 1984 World Series. And they did not, in fact, win the 1984 World Series. That was the best baseball team of all time, the Detroit Tigers. Sorry, Red Sox fans. Hey, Michigan, right? Detroit, you're close enough there. The Papaw
A little further
papayas.
west.
I don't
I grew up a little further west.
Where is Papaw on the Mitt?
Right here.
Oh, okay.
But I grew up here.
Oh, I'm thinking
Yeah.
Papaw. Yeah,
I was gonna say that.
we were here on the Mitt. You guys ever do that with Michigan? You can do that with Michigan. And no joke, if you just turn it a little bit, you've got Maine. You can do the Mitt with Michigan or Maine. Much better with Michigan because here, but you bring in the thumb and tilt it 45 degrees, you've got a pretty rough outline of Maine. So I'm here in
Michigan's
Maine.
more of a paw. Maine's more of a mitten.
Maine's
It's
more of an
Maine.
open hand knife with a ridge.
It's a mitten.
It is a mitten. Anyways, I'm just admitting that.
Okay, back to your illustration.
Yeah. So anyways, I went to college, took many courses, talked to people who I love and trust, and they handed down what they had learned that the Baltimore Orioles won the 1984 pennant, And then somebody who was actually at the game or who was a sports aficionado sat me down and said, hey, man, I love you, but that's wrong. You just don't have all the facts. I'm much more reluctant to give that up because it's not just a fact that I believe. It's something that I built a lot of foundation or a lot of stuff on. And it comes from somebody that I trust, right? And it's something that turning back now would mean starting all over from scratch, learning who won the World Series, learning the roster, learning how old they were. We're so hesitant to give up some of these bad assumptions because at this point in our lives, they're sacred treasures in the vaults of our minds.
Yeah.
And I was taught certain things, and to be really transparent, what do I have? Let's say today you come out of the closet, I'm gay and I'm here to stay. I was born this way, hip hip hooray. And does that take courage today? No. You're the hero. They'll write a song about you.
That's right.
Maybe 100 years ago, sure. You betcha. I'll give it to you. It takes courage. I'll give it to you. Though you don't really see a whole lot of that. Actually, you usually see people. Doesn't matter. This is irrelevant. Do I have anything to gain? Will anybody regale me with songs for honestly approaching the King James argument from a fact-based perspective? No one will write songs about me unless they have a lot of swears in them.
Song.
Right, I was about to say it won't be a nice one. But I don't know, man, and stuff like coming to church in my shorts, and I don't have a long commute, so I remember my sandals. And by the time I was here, I said, "Oh, I forgot my sandals, but it's cool because I'm more like Jesus, barefooted." And no, he was wearing sandals like Ray. He actually had Under Armour sandals, I think. Yeah. No, he had armor of God sandals.
Nike.
Yeah. Oh, Nike. Oh no. But
The Israelite shoes are made out of.
right, exactly. They
40
lasted,
years
yes.
We wish.
So I guess my point is, it is, like Kev said, well, I studied this for 40 years, and that's all somebody has to know, is they studied it for 40 years, which is enough for them to never consider a reasonable alternative. And it's not right, guys. It's not right.
I've always done that.
Right, exactly. We've always done it this way. Why
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel? I'd encourage you guys, if you got 30 extra minutes, listen to Mark Foster's most
Really
recent
good.
podcast.
Holy cow.
Really solid. Wow, really good. And Mark Foster's podcast called This Poor Pastor's Pocket. Very well done. I'm really glad that I sat down with him and gave him all the material for that and prepared him for
He ran with it.
That's what I'm saying here about
right? No, but somebody says, well, we've always done it that way. One of my favorite videos or pictures that I've seen is a man walking his daughter down the aisle at a wedding. But she is half white, half black. I don't know a politically correct term for it. Forgive me. I don't know if that's allowed anymore though.
Mixed race.
Mixed race? I don't know.
I think.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what is. And I'm not being rude. I really just want to be sensitive. The thing is, it wasn't a father, it was a grandfather. Grandfather walking the daughter down the aisle. Why was it the grandfather walking the daughter down the aisle? Because he did not walk his daughter down the aisle because his daughter was marrying a black man. And so by way of showing his repentance for his racism, he walked his granddaughter down the aisle. And I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And I thought, here's this guy who's probably around 70, not ancient by any means, but He's had quite a few years on him. He could have studied something for 40 years, 50 years even. And he changed. And it must not have been easy, but spending enough time around, his daughter's husband, a black man, apparently, or when he had a granddaughter who was half black, half white, that'll change you, right? And something catalyzed a change in him where he then manifested that repentance and said, okay, old dog, new tricks. And he reinvented the wheel. He admitted that the Orioles had not won the 1984 World Series, so to speak, and he checked it out and changed. And man, look at verse 3 again. Like, in the mouth of the foolish is the rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them. There is no other way to say it if we're going to be biblically faithful than people who will parade around 40 years of study as if it's some sort of trophy. It is not. It's an albatross. You're not being humble. You're being arrogant and proud, and the Bible calls you a fool.
So you're beating other people.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's a club.
Correction.
It's a club, and it's well, I think in the mouth of the foolish is the rod of pride. I think wouldn't that mean that they're getting struck with a rod? I don't know. I'm just looking at it. Maybe we can check it out in the old Hebrew.
While you're going that way, I do
Yeah,
have
please
a comment.
do your thing, man.
Awkward picture.
Right?
When you're first saved and you're first learning, having that house of cards of what people taught, just gave to you very quickly, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
But if that's where you stay, the book of Hebrews, when in time you ought to be teachers.
Yes.
We got to go back and teach you the first principles again because you're kind of just stayed there.
Well, it's like Hebrews 6. He said, you guys know all of these things. Good. He didn't say to, not. A lot of Jews still practice the traditions. They just embrace Jesus. There were some parts of it, though, they had to leave off because now they were going on to maturity, which the Bible says.
Right.
This is cool. I think this said it really well. A fool's proud talk becomes a rod that beats him, but the words of the wise keep them safe. I like that a lot. Because you can brag about 40 years of experience, but then whether it's in this life or the next, you're going to be humble. And it's going to be a rod that beats you, and you're going to say, my bad. Let's hope it's in this life. I don't know about the status of judgment for believers in the next life. I don't know. I've gone back and forth. But suffice to say, I do want to keep pretty short accounts with God. Right?
I think the worst thing would be a what if.
Sure.
You could have.
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah.
If only. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a depth of the negative part of judgment. And for saved people is, dude, you could have done so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, and I think that's going to come not so much as the judgment seat of Christ, but almost at the great white throne. When we say, holy cow, I could have at least attempted to reach that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when God says, that's when I'm going to wipe away all your tears. Is because I think we're going to see all that we could have done. And we're going to see the lasting effects of our stupidity
Agreed.
in the souls of men and women that are condemned. That's
Could be.
much Kevinology.
Yeah, but I mean,
it makes sense to me.
It would make sense, I do know that the works that are not good works will be burned up,
Yes.
right? Wood, hay,
Yes.
stubble. I don't know.
Yes.
I won't pretend to understand the process. I was just thinking about that this week, actually. I should have saved this for Sunday. That way I had something of substance. But in the book of Acts, when Peter's like, these are the days of Joel. Remember how we were talking about that? Nobody would have ever said, looking at that book of Joel and then looking at Pentecost, nobody would have said, oh yeah, Joel was talking about Pentecost. Because he was talking about like sun being blotted out of the sky and stuff like that, clearly with apocalyptic language, but they knew to apply it then. So it just showed me how little I understand about the future and the times in which we're living now. And so I'm just kind of like holding my breath and saying, Lord, whatever I don't have right, please correct me or don't hold it against me. I don't know. Verse 13 strikes me. Even in laughter, the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is happiness. I don't think it just applies to like unbelievers. I don't think he's talking about just fools. I think he's talking about, again, the nature of the human heart and how we can laugh, but even in our laughter, we can still be sorrowful. I've experienced that. I'm sure you guys have too. And the end of that mirth is heaviness. it doesn't, I really don't think, and I have to check this out, but I don't think that the author here is saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think he's just kind of giving us a reality check. You know, this is how the world works. This is how life is. This is how the human heart is.
Well, a lot of humor is tragedy plus time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, that is, you're right, Kim. You're right. I've even seen lately a few more 9/11 jokes popping up. I think it's too soon. I think it'll always be too soon because I lived it. But like, I think you're right. Given enough time, people start treating something with a little more lightness. Some people, that's how they cope, I guess. But the Robert Alter translation says, laughter can conceal a heavy heart, but when the laughter ends, the grief remains. And I think that's pretty insightful.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. When the laughter ends, the grief remains.
I have a couple verses.
Yeah, please.
21 and 22.
21 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
He that despises his neighbor sins, but he that has mercy on the poor is happy. Do they not err that devise evil? But mercy and truth shall be to them that divides good.
It's good, Jay.
It is good, Jay. What do you think about those verses? You just like them? They stick out to you? They're good verses that stick out to you.
What about them? What do you think?
Because I think we should have, like, trying to think. We should just, like, I'm trying to think.
You're good.
Because I know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to.
Well, my wife is the same way. She'll say, "Give me a second," and I'll wait as long as I need to.
Form your words.
So, like, I'm just trying to think of the word.
Doesn't this go with the human side of the Shema?
What's that?
Doesn't this like deal with like the human side of the Shema that
Oh, yeah, definitely.
heavily?
We'll chat about it for a second. If you come up with something, Jay, I want to hear it for sure. But despising means to think little of.
Adam is.
What?
Adam.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, bud.
Adding to the verses that you read, I know in most fundamental churches, they would think less to help the poor. They would assume that poor people, well, if we give them money, they'll just spend it on drugs and spend it on beer or something like that, or cigarettes. And then there's others, they'll have like a food bank and that's about it. But in most fundamental churches I've seen, they're not very merciful to the poor. I did homeless ministry in Madison, Wisconsin. That pastor believed that if you help the poor, God will bless your church.
Yeah.
And every time they help the poor, their offerings went up.
Good. That is
And,
good.
Yeah, it should happen in most churches. Like I've noticed a pastor in Tempe, Arizona, he wants to get a homeless shelter going for his church, and they're really excited to reach out into that community.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that might be something in your vision of your alley one day, I guess.
Well, if we end up building a new building on our campus here over the next 10 years, this upstairs might make a kind of cool little apartment complex for 4 or 6 couples or people. I don't know if it'd be homeless necessarily, but helping people who are unable to help themselves. Certainly part of God's heart.
Right.
I'll mention, I was going to mention this at some point during this proverb, didn't know if it would come up, but what about the person who stands in front of Walmart with the cardboard sign like I saw this week? She's 68 years old and asking for help. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I feel guilty either way, because whether you're an enabler or I brought it up to my buddy, Alyssa, Matt's sister, and we started talking about it. And I said she has an icy cold heart, and I was teasing, but she used to live in California, where a massive amount of people are homeless, and they all have their own storage containers, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just a system out there. It's a whole different economy, whole different thing. Yeah. And she said, I've been around it too much to be essentially, fooled by it. And I said, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. And I did ask this question. I said, is there any situation in which one could find oneself that if one had simply worked harder or made better choices, that they could have avoided. In other words, my question is like, let's say I'm homeless. If I'd made better choices and disciplined myself and spent money more wisely, could I have avoided homelessness? Yes. Does that mitigate Christians helping? I think it's a worthy question, and I don't think it should. How we help is a whole different story.
Right.
We don't just put a $10 bill in somebody's hand, because you're right, Adam. As much as it might seem callous of many pastors to say they're just going to use it on beer, and I wouldn't say it that way. Statistics, I don't like statistics. That's a cold and detached word, but universal experience has demonstrated that it really does come across as enabling and perpetuating a dependent lifestyle. So what do? Well, we give the gospel first and foremost. And then we ask what their particular needs are. We build a relationship with them. Say, how can I help you? J-Bucks?
You could also, if you don't want to give them cash, you could give them a gift card.
That's right.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
A friend of mine from Michigan said that she would go like once a month, take a certain amount of money and buy gift cards, and she would just pass like to McDonald's or Burger King or wherever,
That's awesome.
and she would just pass out, you know, a $5 or $10 gift card, and she knew at least they could get a meal.
That's
And
awesome.
She's
Yeah.
not just driving by and not helping.
Yeah.
I mean, we probably can only afford to do so many of those in a month, but.
Sure. Yeah, 50-cent gift card for you. Now, here's how cynical I am.
They'll just trade it. For
That's exactly right, Kim. This is how cynical I am. As soon as she said that, I thought, great, now they have a little plastic way of trading for drugs. And I thought, Britt, but you're right, Mike, it's exactly right. That's a really cool thing to do. And in my mind, I have just this baked in cynicism that, you know, it's like I tell Matt all the time, like, I assume everybody's lying to him. Why? Because I want to protect him and his money. You know what I mean? Ray, and then Kev Ice Clean,
The whole
Ralph,
thing
everybody.
is you've done your part.
Right,
Yeah, like-
exactly right.
Right, if like,
Whatever happens from there.
what they do
Yep.
with it is not.
That's
but
right.
if God
Your
speaks-
motive is pure.
That's
Right.
That's
And
right.
if God
It's on
tells
them.
you to do it, then.
That's right.
Whether
And-
they, you know,
And you're being wise. You're not just throwing cash at them, right? You're taking an extra step to try to make sure that, hey, this is for food. I've known people who just go right to McDonald's and
Get
just
the
buy
food.
them a little bit of food and give it right to them. That could be a way to do it too.
yeah.
But I've also seen that go right in the trash
Yeah.
too. Because, well,
Yeah, I was gonna say that there was someone who was infamous in town that I could always tell which it was, whether he really had a need or whether he was looking for drug money. You can't say, could you give me $1 so I can go get something? Or he said, if you're hungry, I said, if you're hungry, I'll go. And he said, I'll work for it. That was the difference.
yeah,
He said, I'll help you today. Because I used to have a trucking company, did lots of different odd jobs.
Yeah.
He would. He was a hard worker. He said, if I just give him lunch.
Yeah.
That's all he wanted. He needed the food. But if he asked for the money, that meant he was out of his, he used to sniff glue.
sure.
And he was a mess.
Yeah.
But you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
And in the course of time, he came to sit in church. So he came to get to the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And then his life was totally, I hate to say this, but it was totally wrecked because then the state stepped in, took him to an institution, put him on medication so he'd stay off of it.
Yeah.
He got hooked on the medication they gave him. And he wound up dying alone in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you could tell the difference in it.
Sure.
He said, can you get me some food?
Yeah. Versus.
And I'd take him right in.
Yeah.
He knew where we were going.
Yeah.
We're gonna go get a sandwich.
Yeah.
Or if he asked for the money.
Yeah. It's a big difference sometimes.
So,
Yeah.
but that, you could tell the graceless. Hey, whatever you say, he used to call me his friend, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Friend.
Right. Adam, you had something?
Yes. When I was a kid, I never knew this until my dad would share it later on, but adding to what I said earlier, my pastor, when I was a kid, his name was David Bushy, but he would always, if somebody asked him for money, he would say, hey, I'll take you across the street to Jack in the Box. I don't know if you ever remember Jack in the Box in Oklahoma, but he would say, hey, let's go to Jack in the Box. Some people accepted his offer and some people would just turn away because you knew what the motive was.
I've only ever had one person take me up on the offer of showing up. They call for money. And I say, if you come to a meeting, and you guys remember who that was, I don't want to say his name on Facebook, but he walked right in here. I think he was just here a couple Sundays ago, still coming once in a while, you know?
Yep.
Still want him here. We can build a relationship with him. And Pastor, you've been very faithful to meet his needs, you know, and we at the church have given a few times to help him with gas. We will help people. Churches are in Heartland, but we need a
Even that, we were-
relationship.
Even that, we were wise. We
That's right.
go to the gas station, put gas in his car.
You took the time, you made the effort to go make sure that was
Right,
done.
because, and that's the wise way to help people. And I think a lot of times it's just intermingling our compassion with wisdom.
And it's a lot quicker to stick a $5 bill in somebody's hand than to go to Walmart and get a $5 gift card.
Yes.
And sometimes a little pricier because you get surcharges, right? But wisdom takes effort. What were you going to say anyways, Kev?
That's what I was just pointing out people had their hands up.
Oh. Okay. We have time for one more, I think, one or two. If that's all right with everybody. Oh, ice cream.
What Adam was saying, there was one time in Phoenix, I was going in the parking lot, and it was Thanksgiving, and I think and there was a man in a wheelchair, you know, we just started talking, and I said, "Look, well, how's your Thanksgiving?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just here, you know," and he was in the military, and I'm like, you know, he was poor, you know, he was up, you know, and I said my goodbye, I went to the store, and then just, you know, I thought, no one should be alone on Thanksgiving, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's in the military, you need to show some respect, you know, people, just don't, they did something to help this country,
Sure.
helped this country.
Yep.
I was upset, but I wasn't showing it to the guy.
Yeah.
And, well, I said my goodbye, and I thought to myself, oh, maybe I can get him something, like, you know, the kind of a sort of Thanksgiving kind of meal, like chicken and whatever, and he was so grateful, he almost cried.
Well, there you go.
And when I had gone up to him first, he didn't even ask me for money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's what we should do. The Bible says you give a cup of cold water in his name, it's like giving it to him. Verse. I really like verse. Oh, and by the way, J-Box, you also mentioned verse 22. There's devising evil and devising good. There is a neutral ground, which is just being a lazy slug and not doing anything for anybody else but yourself. But then there's like devising evil, making a plan to rip people off, hurt people, and get rich off the backs of the poor, or deliberately making plans to help people. This is exactly what we were talking about. That wise approach takes effort. The easy way eventually will ruin people, which is a perfect segue to the last verse I'm going to mention, verse 23. Here's Alter's direct from the Hebrew translation. He says, "Work brings profit, but mere talk leads to poverty."
Well, see, you go all the way back to like 19.
Yeah.
All those, that's
Yes.
like they all work together.
Yes, they definitely do. Which it capitalized in verse 24. Wealth is a crown for the wise, but the effort of fools yields only foolishness. So when the wise put their hand to something, it turns into riches. When the fools put their mouth to something, it's just more foolishness. You say, well, I want to be wise. Well, then work. Wisdom is not putting on a sage-like robe and a sage-like medallion and growing a sage-like beard. Wisdom is working hard. That's what wisdom is.
Dressing like Gandalf wouldn't fix it.
It wouldn't. Although if you dress like Gandalf and then worked hard, it might fix it.
it reminds me, I was gonna watch Lord of the Rings.
We're on number 3. We're watching the extended edition. Those are punishingly long, so we still got to make it through number 3. But
Also, verse 25.
25. A truthful witness saves lives, but a false witness is a traitor. Tell the truth. Oh, sorry. I didn't read it. I was reading the. What does 25 say?
A
It
true
says-
witness delivers souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies.
Right. You're either going to help people or you're going to hurt people. You ever talk to somebody and you're like, this person is lying to me? Like almost every day for me. This person's lying to me. Either I already heard the truth from this person and I know this person's a liar, or this person is a habitual lie speaker and I think that every word out of their mouth is a lie. You say, that's harsh. I didn't make up that narrative. I learned that narrative from years of spending time with that person. And it's wisdom, right? To say, this person is very likely lying to me. Not that hate, not an unwillingness to give a second chance. I used to be a liar. I was a pathological liar. I would make up lies and go tell them to people just for the sake of lying. And then March 7th of 2007. No, 2007. I was in college and I was broken with guilt. I don't know why or what. Holy Spirit, sure. I don't know. And broken with guilt. Broken. And by God's grace and only by his grace, because I didn't choose to be broken over my guilt. I didn't choose any of that. I just couldn't function. And by God's grace today, I can't even tell. I just can't. I turned bright red. I used to be the world's best liar. Now I'm the world's worst liar. I can't even play a practical joke, man. It's bad. I just can't do it. And there are some things that I hope no one ever just comes right up to me and asks, because I'll either have to say, that's not something I want to discuss, thus pleading the fifth makes you look guilty, right? Or just saying, well, then here, you ask, I'll tell you, right? Because I won't lie, I won't do it. The only situation in which I would be like an Anne Frank situation. And even then, I'd lose sleep, I know it. But I don't think I would at this point. But lying hurts people. It hurts you, it hurts people. And it's a characteristic of people who are not part of God's kingdom.
It's so sad because politics is riddled with it.
Yes. And you expect it. You
And
hear campaign
they're
promises, we don't get our hopes up anymore.
Barefaced, just,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. I missed one really quick. Fools make a mock of sin. Right? That one took a while because in high school we would always,
Yeah.
But this is interesting, this particular translation, this Robert Alter one. It says, fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and seek reconciliation. So it's more or less talking about one's own personal experience with sin. You can laugh it away, or we can acknowledge that it's wrong.
There was a comedian whose shtick was, he was blotto. He was so drunk. I can't remember his name. But, that was his humor.
Yep.
Mocking it.
Yep.
You remember him, Ralph?
I'm thinking of a couple, so I don't know which one you're thinking of. One of them was a character that was on the Jackie Gleason show that always wandered into the tavern.
I remember Otis and Manny Griffin.
Frank.
The biggest laugh was he'd go to the phone before leaving. He'd call up, tell them, get the kids off the street. I'm trying to come home.
Right.
Yeah,
And
this was
they
a
thought that was
stand-up
hilarious.
comedian.
It would be unless your kid was under the front of the car because he's an idiot.
Right. So, fools making a mock of sin. I also think of like television programs. We were going to go see Buzz Lightyear this Friday with that Smitty's gift card. We were all going to go see Buzz Lightyear. Toy Story.
Mhm.
And then I read it's not allowed in the United Arab Emirates. And I said, oh, no. Sure enough, they had cut a very romantic and prominent same-sex kiss. But in response, almost like a petty revenge, to the Florida bill by DeSantis that they didn't like, that they called the Don't Say Gay bill, which is wildly inaccurate. But they put it back in the movie. And so had to tell the kids, sorry kids, we're not going to go see Lightyear Friday. They put a bunch of stuff that God hates in there. And I don't want to expose them to that. And so we're not going to see the movie. And we got to vote with our dollars. We got to vote with the empty seats and take a stand somewhere. The reason I say it is because if you make a mock at sin, that's how they do it. Will and Grace made a whole bunch of people mad when it first came out. And now you got shows. I saw the first part of the first episode. It didn't really interest me. Schitt's Creek, SCH. I realize that sounds like I just swore, but it's SCHITTS. It's probably supposed to sound like that. Yeah. Okay. I realized I shouldn't have said. I didn't think about that. But anyways, that particular program. Now I'm going to turn bright red. Because the subtitles on our live stream will absolutely make it sound like I just said the English translation of the Greek word skubalon. Anyhow, now that features a very likable, prominently likable homosexual character. Parks and Recreation, toward the end, they introduced a very likable homosexual character. The Office in season 3, I believe it was, introduced a very likable homosexual character. What's the point? Well, you can't make those guys unlikable.
We're gonna normalize it.
right? Can't make them
Normalize
online.
it, so you think, oh, that's how it is.
Right. You can't just boy, you couldn't be more right, Ralph. You can't just let it be. And now we turn on Star Trek Discovery, and you've got 2 gay, 1 lesbian, 1 bi, 1 trans, and goodness, I don't, and 1 not. But I don't know. I'm not being rude. I just don't know. And these aren't extras. These are all part of the main cast of characters receiving star billing every Sunday, every whatever day it came out. And for what it's worth, and this is anecdotal, but I will say it is absolutely true. I'm sorry. When shows clamor to, let's use another C word, cater, kowtow, there's a kowtow, there's a K word, to inclusion when I'm not against inclusion. Inclusion's great. But let's say 2% of your population is this, and yet 60% of your show's population is this. That's not inclusion. That's not representation. That's agenda driving. And when that happens, we notice that the acting quality of a show goes way down because they didn't hire them for their acting. They hired them for their sexuality. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and that's not, you say, Michael, that's too far. No. I'm just helping you guys see online or in person.
Yeah.
I don't expect to be crucified here. Online, you never know who's going to watch. And just being real honest and saying, look, I'm not anti this or phobic or whatever this. I'm just saying that's just one of the many little effects. Is even entertainment begins to suffer when you have to cram in and then shoehorn in all this, and then all of a sudden you're left with a relatively unwatchable program. And then you're called racist or phobic if you dare to speak up and say, this person can't act. What are they doing in the program? When you know good and well what they're doing in the program. And it all started because they're making light of guilt. They're mocking guilt. And they're doing that because if you can get someone to laugh at something, they're no longer convicted about it after a short amount of time.
Well, look at the original Star Trek. What was the what's his face?
George Takei, yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Openly gay man, but they're like, well, why didn't you push the fact that you were allowed to be gay? And he goes, because that had nothing to do with the show.
Correct.
Probably more wisdom from that dude than I've ever seen on most Hollywood people. He's like, because that had nothing to do with what we're trying to.
Correct.
We're just trying to produce a show about outer space.
Yep.
It's
Had
a
nothing to do
different
with
world.
it. Yeah, had
It
nothing
really
to do with the
was.
sexuality.
And you know what's interesting? And now they'll look back and they'll say, well, Gene Roddenberry was all about inclusion and stuff. And they say, yeah, that's the whole point of Star Trek. They always had a message, right? The more you know. And even in Star Trek The Next Generation, they did this one about Data versus this lawyer who was trying to say that Data wasn't a person, etc. And you could read between the lines and know what agenda they were going for. But they did it behind the scenes, but it was slowly, weakening there. So I see it laying the foundation. But you rewind 30 years to the original Star Trek. 30-ish? About 30 years. The original Star Trek, 20, anyway. 30.
Well,
They didn't even,
60s,
66,
That's-
I think it was. They didn't even care. Everybody's like, it was all about inclusion. And it was, because there was no money. There was no racism. You had your first interracial kiss on TV was Kirk and Uhura, right? And that was the inclusion it was going for. Not your sex.
No.
Nope. Spock and Uhura is actually in the reboot in the J.J. Abrams franchise. Yeah. Anyway, so sorry, that's a different thing.
That was an episode where aliens were trying to see what it was to see it, and they put them together.
Yeah, right, exactly right. And so, but that kind of inclusion was actually pretty healthy. It's saying, hey, nobody hates anybody. We're one human race. It was kind of cool. The underlining of that, though, was there was no religion to divide them either, right? But religion is only a sword when people refuse to submit to the king.
It was once.
All right. What's that?
It was once. There's one episode where they're all standing at the end. This doesn't feel right because worshiping a sun god. And she said, no. Horus says, no. S-O-N, guys.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Because they had a Christian, and they didn't.
Oh, no kidding.
They were so far out of it. They had no.
How about that?
Because they're thinking, this doesn't fit with sun worshipers. We don't understand.
Yeah.
She said, no. S-O-N.
S-O-N, sun worshippers. Well, all that to say.
So all of that got in there. So
all that to say that our society has made a really interesting pastime and very successful endeavor of getting people to think lightly and laugh at what God calls an abomination. Whether that be, and by the way, we do it in churches too. I don't do it anymore by God's grace. I joke around about how Baptists like to eat, but I don't joke around about gluttony because I recognize that I'm heavy. And I know that that's not something to joke around about because God says, take care of my temple, right? I think, and again, drinking and smoking, whatever one thinks about those things, the minute they become excess and they rule you, that's not funny anymore. That's a problem, and it needs to be kicked out of your life. You know what I mean? Like we tend to make jokes about things, maybe to deflect the guilt, and that's exactly what that proverb is talking about. All right. Speaking of talking about, I'm done talking about. I'm going to shut down the live stream.
You just ended a sentence.
In a preposition. I know. I was trying to be smart. It didn't work.